To start with, I'm going to start by telling you a story. And this story is about a girl. And she's got big dreams and big aspirations, but she lives here. It's dirty, it's dusty, and there isn't always enough food to eat. Her family can't afford to send her to school, so chances are she'll be married and pregnant before her 18th birthday. And in fact, the statistics say that she's more likely to be sexually assaulted than she is to attend high school. This is a girl, Kariatu. And Kariatu's 10 years old, and I met Kariatu in January this year when I was in Sierra Leone. And Kariatu's story is a story of hope. She's a shining example of what's possible when a girl's given access to education. When Kariatu was just 7 years old, both of her parents passed away. She was sent to live with her grandmother in a neighbouring village. As soon as she arrived at her grandmother's house, she knew things were going to be very different from that point on. Her grandmother didn't believe in educating girls, so at just 7 years of age, Kariatu was taken out of school and put to work. So Kariatu would wake up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, head to the well, collect large buckets of water and take it to her grandmother's house. She was working on a farm, she was selling vegetables and produce at the market. Once she'd finished doing that, she'd come home, she'd collect firewood, she'd clean her grandmother's house, and then she'd start cooking dinner. Kariatu was working more than 12 hours a day when she was 7 years old to earn her keep to stay at her grandmother's house. And 2 years later, Kariatu was sitting at a market and a local principal from a school saw her. And he went up to her, he's like, Kariatu, what are you doing here? Why aren't you in school? And she shyly told him her story and her situation. And the principal made a note of it and he said, look, I don't know what I'm going to do about this, but I'm going to do something. And a few weeks later, he got his chance to do something. Our country director, Ina, from One Girl Sierra Leone, went to that community and she was looking for vulnerable girls who were eligible for education scholarships. Mr. Cargo raced to the market, grabbed Kariatu, he's like, you have to come, there's interviews on now. Kariatu left the market and raced straight to the interview. And as soon as Ina heard Kariatu's story and what she'd been going through, she offered Kariatu a full scholarship to attend school. And Kariatu was so excited. She was 9 years old by this stage and she couldn't believe that she'd finally have an opportunity to go back to school. But her excitement was a bit short-lived. As soon as she went home and told her grandmother said, no, I'm sorry, you're not going back to school. Ina and the principal made so many visits to her grandmother's house trying to convince her that you need to educate her. She's a girl, she still deserves to be educated. And finally, on the 4th visit to the house, Kariatu's grandmother finally said yes, and Kariatu was allowed to go back to school. And she's now 10 years old, and she's in grade 2, and even though she was out of school for 2 years, she's one of the smartest girls in her class. And this year, we provided 100 girls like Kariatu education scholarships to attend school, and I'm going to tell you why. So my name's Chantelle, as I introduced before, and I grew up in Melbourne. And I went to really good schools, had lots of opportunities, had really supportive parents, and I got into property investing when I was quite young. So when I was 21, I bought my first apartment, and then after that I studied to be a web designer, and I thought that's cool, and then I started my own web design company too. And it didn't seem to matter how successful I became, I still wanted more, which is such a, first world problem, isn't it? More. And so to fill up this void of more, I started drinking. I kept drinking. I was taking drugs. I was partying and I was shopping. But no matter how much I did any of that stuff, it still didn't make a difference. So I thought, okay, I've got everything I've ever wanted. Why am I still not happy? So I needed to find out, so I put myself into some personal development programs, and one of the programs asked me to create a community project. And I thought, okay, well, I've got friends that I get drunk with and take drugs with on the weekend, but I don't really think that's a community that I need to help. What am I going to do? And I was completely stumped. And then just by chance, I was lying in bed one day watching random videos on YouTube, and I came across this short 3-minute video clip about a war going on in a place called Darfur in Sudan. And I was shocked. There was a war where the government was killing its own people. Hundreds and thousands of women were being raped and brutalised every single day. And it just seemed like no one was doing anything about it. So that was it. A little spark just kind of ignited inside of me. And I knew I had to go to Africa. And I did my research, and unfortunately I couldn't go to Darfur because it was a war zone, so I wasn't allowed to go there. But my friend Emily had just returned from Sierra Leone, and she'd just been over there for 6 weeks building a children's home. And I was like, great, sounds awesome, sign me up, what do I have to do? Had to raise $3,000, get your place in the program, and off you go to build a primary school there. So I did that, and just 4 months after I had watched that YouTube clip, I was on my way to Africa. And I got on the plane in Melbourne, which is one of the most developed cities in one of the most developed countries in the entire world. And I stepped off the plane in Sierra Leone, which was at that stage was the least developed country on the entire planet, like the bottom of the development index. And I was shocked. Like, I remember my first night, I was driving through the city, and the entire eastern side of the city was living by candlelight and kerosene lamps. There wasn't any electricity. And we got to our accommodation, it was pitch black, and I walked into my room, looked at the floor, and my bed for the night was this mattress, dirty mattress, riddled with holes. I was like, oh my God, there was a mosquito net above the bed that seriously must have been like 45 years old. And I just went, oh my God, what have I done? Like, what have I gotten myself into this time? And I'd also been drinking water because I was quite nervous arriving in a country that you have no idea what to expect. So I needed to pee really, really badly. So I went to look for the toilet, and I found the toilet, and I walked in, and I was like, there's no water in the toilet. How does it flush? And then I tried turning on the tap, and there's no water comes out of the tap either. Okay, what do I do? So I peed very quickly, washed my hands with hand sanitizer, and then raced back into our room and just hoped someone else would kind of deal with my pee in the morning. I just had no idea what to do in that situation. And the next morning we woke up and we took a 6-hour drive to Camaquie, which is, it's a village, 6 hours from Freetown. And I would love to tell you that my first 2 weeks in Camaquie were wonderful and filled with rainbows and unicorns, and we had such a marvellous time, but I'd be bullshitting you. It sucked. Like, I hated it. There was no electricity, there was no running water, there was no food, there was uncensored poverty, there was no supermarkets, no shopping malls, no wine. There was absolutely nothing. And little by little, over those 2 weeks, I just slowly got broken down bit by bit. I was doing manual labour in 35-degree heat, which I'd never done before, and I had blisters covered all over my hands. I couldn't stomach the food, so I was only living on bread and bananas. I was barely in contact with any of my family and friends, and I just wanted to escape, and I cried. I cried heaps during that first 2 weeks. And then, I'm not sure if you've ever been in those moments where things get so desperate and you're just at breaking point. And I called one of my friends, Marty, and he was in Sydney. And he was on the phone to me. He's like, oh yeah, Shani, I'm at a barbecue and there's beautiful food and there's champagne and we're all getting smashed. It's freaking awesome. I was like, great. I was sitting on the steps outside our house watching a chicken scratch around in this massive pile of rubbish in the backyard. And I just started sobbing. I'm like, Marty, I can't do this. I need to go home. It's too hard. I can't stay here. This isn't for me. And he said the thing that I needed to hear in that moment. He said, look, I really can't understand what you're going through, but you're there for a reason. What is it? You keep focusing on everything that you hate, but this isn't an accident. Why are you there? And I stopped for a moment, kind of sniffed a bit and wiped a bit of snot off my cheek, and I was like, why am I here? What's the reason? And in 2 seconds, it became very clear. I was there for the kids. And, and there were 80 beautiful children living in a neighbouring children's home. And I loved them. Like, every morning we'd wake up, they'd be there to give us hugs. Like, them just being in our presence seemed to make them happy. And as soon as I took the focus off myself and I put it over there, the state of my hands didn't matter. My bed didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore because I had a reason for being there. And after that, my next 2 weeks looked completely different. I spent a lot of time with the kids rather than, making bricks. And I took kids to the doctors and I organised their stuff for school. And by the time it got to the end, I didn't want to go home. And I started noticing all these beautiful things about the people I'd never noticed before, like the girls there. they spend hours plaiting and replaiting each other's hair, and they plait it with like these little sprouts coming up on different sides of their heads. There are fruit trees everywhere where you can just go up and grab a mango off the tree and just stuff your face with this beautiful mango. And the more I stay there, the more I realize we're so much the same. You know, they fall in love, they've got dreams, they've got aspirations just like we do. And I don't know why I thought we were so different before we got there. And then I had to go back home. And I tried really hard to reintegrate back into my old life. So came back to Melbourne, and in the first few weeks of getting back, I was going to the Melbourne Cup, which is kind of a big deal, the races in Melbourne, and I had to buy a dress. So I went and spent $400 on a dress for the Melbourne Cup. And all I could think about after I'd purchased that dress was how many kids could that pay to go to school with that $400, you know? How many meals could that buy those kids? And I'm going to wear this dress for a day. And I ignored it. I was like, oh, whatever, just get over it. And then I tried the drinking again. I tried the drugging again. I tried the partying. I tried the shopping. But I was different, you know? I'd changed. And it took me 6 months, but I finally decided I'd had enough. I had to give up the charade and the pretend life I was living, and I had to start again. So one weekend in early 2009, I decided to give up everything. So on one weekend, I broke up with my boyfriend. I told my business partner I was leaving the business, and I moved out of my apartment. I was starting again, and I was terrified, completely terrified. The global financial crisis had just hit, so I had no money. I had mortgage repayments. I was terrified I was going to go bankrupt in the first 3 months of doing this big change. And I started applying for jobs at non-profit organisations because I wanted to work somewhere where I was making a difference. I didn't want to just design websites anymore. I applied for 35 or more jobs at non-profit organisations, and I got knocked back nearly every single time. And it was just one wall too many for me. So one night, over a bottle of red wine with the co-founder of One Girl, his name's David, we came together and One Girl was born. A lot of the questions we get asked is, well, why did you choose girls? You know, out of everything you could do in the whole world, why girls? And there's a few reasons why. The first is that Sierra Leone is one of the worst places on earth to be born a girl. So the girls there, 30% of them will be married before they turn 15. So if you can imagine being in year 9 and being married with babies or forced into marriage because they're child marriages, a girl born in Sierra Leone is guaranteed to be sexually assaulted in her lifetime. It's not a 1 in 5 or 1 in 4. She's guaranteed to experience sexual violence. And a lot of this has to do with the war. So there was a war in Sierra Leone where, very well known for having a lot of child soldiers who were cutting off the hands and feet of many of their fellow citizens. And rape was used as a weapon of war. So there was something like more than 80% of the population of the women and girls there were attacked in some way during the war. And one of the most common reactions I get when people go, when I'm like, oh, I work in Sierra Leone, is like, oh my God, isn't it so incredibly dangerous for you? It's not for me, because going there, it's actually one of the safest places in West Africa as a tourist if you're going there. But for the girls, it's different. You know what I mean? If you're born into a country which has got a culture like that, it's a very different experience. The reason I do what I do is because I connect with these girls. I was brought up with endless opportunities. I had so many things given to me when I was growing up, but my actual childhood in itself was quite rough. I grew up in a home where there was a lot of alcoholism, where there was physical violence, and as a little girl, I was sexually abused. And all these things connect me to what these girls go through. And the truth is that it's like 1 in every 30 women will experience some kind of violence in their lifetime. So if you look at all the girls around and the women around the room, that's a worldwide statistic, not just in Sierra Leone. 1 in 3 will experience violence. And I connect with you. Like, I understand what you've gone through. I know what it's like. And for me, like doing the work I do, when I help other women and girls, I get to heal myself. You know, I get to help all the little parts inside of me that I couldn't help when I was a little girl. So that's some of the reasons why we do the work we do. And education changes everything for these girls. Like, an educated girl knows her rights. An educated girl will have a smaller family. She'll have a healthier family. She'll get married later. An educated girl earns more money. an educated girl makes sure that her children go to school just because she knows what it's like and how important education is. Our Back to School Scholarships program, which is one of our programs, they teach girls to be empowered. They teach girls to be independent. They teach girls that you can follow your dreams, you can have passions, do what you can do for your country. And we love it, basically. I love it. It's my passion. One of the biggest challenges we have, though, is how do we connect people like you, people in Australia, with work in Sierra Leone? It's a really big difference. Melbourne and Sierra Leone are about as far apart as you can get on the map. And the truth is that everyone's really tired of the old rules of fundraising. Like, no one wants to eat a meal and then be told that children are starving halfway across the world. No one wants to be guilted into caring anymore. And we don't want to guilt you either. Like, our girls aren't victims, They're powerful, strong women and they might need a bit of support, but they love to laugh and have fun and play and do all that kind of stuff. So I thought, what can we do to connect people here with people over there that's fun and that's easy and that's exciting? So that's when the idea of Do It in a Dress was born, which is why I'm wearing a school dress, by the way. The idea is that you start by picking a challenge. So you can pick any challenge. You can walk, run, jump off a building, do whatever you want. And once you've picked your challenge, you can raise $240. That's the cost of an education scholarship for one girl in Sierra Leone for an entire year. Once you've done that, go through and do it in a dress. So you put on your school dress, do whatever the challenge is, you do it in a dress. And once you've done that, you get to send a girl to school in Africa. And we have a very awesome video to show you how cool it's been so far.